Hello and welcome to this week's lecture where we'll examine the market structures of monopolistic competition and oligopoly. I'm Mike Wenz and I'll be guiding you through the slides. We can think about industrial organization as lying along a continuum where at one end of the spectrum we have firms that are perfect competitors. And perfect competitors take market prices given and decide how much output to produce given the market price. At the other end, we have a monopolist who serves the entire market themselves and has some degree of market power where they can raise their prices without losing all of their customers. In between, we can think about monopolistic competitors. They're monopolists in the sense that they have some degree of market power where they can choose the price that they charge. They can raise or lower their prices. They are also competitors in the sense that they can't prevent entry from other firms who want to hone in on their market share. And in this case, the entry of other firms will push profits toward zero. Here are the characteristics of a monopolistically competitive market that we're interested in. The first one is that there are many buyers and sellers and potential entrants and exits in the market. The second one, and this is the important distinction between a monopolistically competitive firm and a perfectly competitive firm, is that firms sell differentiated products. They sell products that are not exactly identical. Coke, for instance, is slightly different than Pepsi, and some people have a preference to one or the other. And then finally, in a monopolistically competitive market, firms can freely enter and exit. The important things to highlight are that firms in competitive markets are price takers who take the market price as given, but monopolistically competitive firms have some degree of market power. We can think of lots of examples of monopolistically competitive industries. Restaurants can be very similar but not identical. Beers, craft beers for instance, and laptop computers are all similar but not identical. Monopolistic competitors face a downward sloping demand curve. Customers have a brand preference for their product. Their product is somewhat different than other substitutes, and while there may be close substitutes, the producers of, for example, Coke may be able to raise their prices a little bit without losing all of their customers to Pepsi. So each monopolistic competitor faces a downward sloping demand curve. It's not perfectly elastic like that of a perfectly competitor, but it's going to be somewhat more elastic than the demand curve facing the market or the demand curve that would be faced if there was a monopolist that controlled the entire industry. The profit maximizing condition for a monopolistically competitive firm, however, is the same as the profit maximizing condition for both the perfectly competitive firm and the monopolist. They want to find the place where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and that will determine the quantity they produce, and then they can charge the price up to the demand curve, as you can see in the figure at the right. So all firms maximize profits by setting marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, and then choosing the price that the demand curve will allow. In the picture that we've shown here, this particular monopolistically competitive firm is earning positive economic profits. You can see that the price is greater than the average total cost that it takes to produce each unit. So this firm has revenues in excess of costs, and you can see the profits in the diagram at right. Monopolistic competitors may earn profits in the short run, but in the long run they face the threat of entry. And what winds up happening is that as new entrants come into the market, the demand curve for this particular product will shift down and to the right. And in the long run, entry will continue in this market as long as profits are positive and will eventually push the demand curve down until we're in the situation like we see it in this particular picture. We still have each firm setting marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, and each firm then charging the price that quantity will bear along the demand curve. But in the long run, entry will occur until profits are driven down to zero. That is, each firm's price is driven down to average total cost. Firms will thus charge price greater than marginal cost, implying some deadweight loss. And firms will also not produce at the minimum of the average total cost curve as they do under perfect competition. So this market, in those two senses, is less efficient than a perfectly competitive market. One thing we can often recognize in monopolistically competitive markets is that they often have lots of advertising. Producers try to establish that they have a differentiated product from their competitors. They have some positive markup above marginal cost that they can sell at, and so they use advertising to differentiate their product from their competitors. Now, there's a question about advertising, and it's worth thinking about this from an economic standpoint. Advertising, in one view, is seen as just a wasteful use of resources. We don't produce anything with advertising. All we're doing is persuading customers to buy something, perhaps something that they don't need. The second argument, the second viewpoint, though, suggests that advertising can provide useful information. And it may be less costly for consumers to get their information by having the producers produce the ads rather than the consumers go out and seek it out on their own. One of the interesting things about this viewpoint is that it's not always the case that the advertising actually contains some information. More that it might provide a signal to consumers who observe when the brand is promising to provide value to consumers, that we see this as something that they're spending their hard-earned money on to provide us with a signal that, yes, it's worth our time to buy their product, and they're willing to commit resources to tell us that. So it's possible that advertising may contain informational value even if the commercials are not particularly informative or in some cases not even truthful.